What's up, everyone? My name is Wes, and you're listening to the Ear Coffee Podcast. For today's episode, I caught up with Stillwater singer-songwriter Colin Bracewell. This week, he'll be releasing his debut EP, Valley. We talked about the 2 years since he put out his first single, the burst of creativity that led to the EP's final form, and a whole lot more. Without any further ado, here's my interview with Colin Bracewell on the Ear Coffee Podcast. How are you doing on this Sunday morning, Colin?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. Now that we got everything sorted out, we can get into it.
Yeah.
I find that pretty much anyone that makes music or is really engaged with music has had a connection with it for a long time. They grew up around it. So I want to ask you, did you have a pretty musical childhood growing up with musical family members? And what were the songs or artists that you really connected with kind of growing up as you kind of developed your taste in music that you might have now?
Yeah. Okay. So, starting off, like, my mom would always, play music, even when I was unborn. And she says that, that played a big part in my music or whatever that means. And then I will say that my dad, he's like a drummer, and, he drums even to this day, and I guess he's not that old. That makes him sound really old. But so he's a drummer, and then my cousins all do music too, and so that was obviously a big push into that kind of direction. And then I think for what they were listening to, it was funny because like there were songs that I heard as a child that I kind of just like forgot about, or I didn't like recognize were a thing until I rediscovered them when I was like in my like late teens or even like just teenage years, and I was like, whoa, like I totally missed this song. Like this song is such a banger, and I totally forgot that like I knew the song existed, but I never knew that it was like,
yeah, you hadn't like connected the dots.
Yeah. And so one of those songs was Sunshine of Your Love by Cream. Yeah, which is so weird because it's like, why would I be listening to that when I was like 3-4 years old? I don't know, but so that was a big thing. And then I guess with the whole musical journey, I started on violin when I was 4, and I was kind of forced to continue with that all the way up to my high school years, but honestly, like I love that experience, and it's awesome because I can still play it, and I still use it on my like production and recording process and stuff like that. And then probably starting in first grade, I started doing like musical theater type of stuff, and back when I lived in Fresno, California, that was a big part of my life. And then when I moved to Stillwater, Minnesota, I was about 13, and then I decided to do saxophone. Started on that. And so
alto or tenor? I
started on alto. That's the only one that I've ever been able to own. I've done a lot of, yeah. They get pretty expensive, but I will say when I was in high school, tenor was my main one, just because, it was the schools and I had my own mouthpiece, so I was able to, do whatever I want with it. But that was so much fun, and we did like the Eau Claire Jazz Festival and stuff like that. And yeah. So we did that. The combo kind of setting was my favorite setting. Big band was okay, but combo was just so much fun. You just had so much freedom. And then during that, I think during that time I also did like the cover rock band kind of stuff starting 7th grade. And then I realized sophomore, junior year of high school that I was like, hey, I think that I would have a better time doing this just kind of on my own, or at least being kind of the main songwriter and stuff like that.
A lead
so
artist.
That's kind of, yeah. And so that's kind of when I decided to like kind of focus in on that, not so much write, but just kind of like perform a little bit more solo and stuff like that. And then I think starting university at the University of Minnesota, that's kind of when I was able to meet a bunch of people in like the music scene and everything. And so really like the past 2 years, because I'll be a junior this year, that really kind of helped me focus in on like, okay, this is what I want to do. Um, and I mean, yeah, I feel really happy of where I've come in the last 2 years. But yeah, that's kind of the journey so far,
Yeah.
at least a little bit. But yeah,
Yeah. You kind of just were touching on this, but was there really a specific moment when you knew that you wanted to kind of even go that next step with playing shows, releasing your music, and like putting out an EP now going forward? But because even if you're like working on your own music, it's a whole nother thing to put it out there and perform it. So was there an additional moment when you realized that that was something you even wanted to do, like also kind of maybe connecting with the U of M and that
yeah.
influence?
I mean, I think I was always doing it, and I think honestly, the University of Minnesota like kind of allowed me to spend more time with it. And honestly, like with COVID too, like it it honestly became my main um, kind of thing to do. I mean, I was still in school and that was still important, and it's not like I was struggling or anything, but um, school became a lot easier. So it was like, well, what else am I gonna do? And now is this opportunity to just go for it, and so that especially with writing and then getting better production and stuff like that, that all happened, at least self production. I'd say I still did stuff with other producers and stuff before, um but at least just kind of trying to figure out my sound. I think the past 2 years have been that, and I feel like I've become pretty successful with that now. At least like I'd say that like obviously your sound's always going to be changing, but I will say that with this EP, I feel comfortable. I feel good with this sound that I'm at right now. And I think that's really important for people to figure out, because I mean, there's so many different influences, but eventually, you gotta make something cohesive, or else, what is your thing, and there's still like a little bit of variety in the EP, but I think there is a definite cohesiveness to it for
Yeah.
sure.
We'll pretty much get back to all of that with the EP. So we're just rewind a little bit
Yeah,
because we were kind of talking about this before we start recording with your first couple of singles back in like early 2019. I think was the first one, or at least when we heard about it and you sent it over to us. But with those songs, because you did 2 songs a year, 2019 and like kind of early 2020, and then there's the song "Don't Let Go" and "Fall," and these are all songs that aren't even available on streaming anymore. So
yeah,
some time has passed.
yeah,
So just I want to talk a little bit about writing those songs, those really early songs, and how they had a really stripped down kind of acoustic sound, especially the first two that sounds vastly different from where you're at now. And
yeah.
I kind of want to have the angle of like, how do you feel about these songs looking back at them, especially given the context of where you're at now, and fill in the gaps there. And I'm sure hindsight is going to provide some clarity.
Yeah, for sure. I I will say that like those tracks are like, um, they needed to be done. I'll say that. I think that if I hadn't released those, um, and thought they were releasable or whatever in the moment, then I would. I mean, I probably would not release something now that I feel as confident in. Um, yeah, I don't know. I think it takes time. It takes time to develop your sound and just to feel comfortable with yourself as an artist. And I don't know. It's tricky just because when I took them down, a lot of people were like, "Oh, what did you do? Like, I love this song. Like, you should have kept it." And I think I just didn't really think it represented me. And I think that I had gone a long way from that time, and also like all of those tracks weren't produced by me. Um, at least like I wasn't the
Like
main
the
the main.
primary
Yeah,
recorder
yeah,
engineer. Yeah.
exactly. And I didn't even know what that meant. I didn't know anything about what arrangement meant. I didn't know what production was. I didn't even know what software to use. I didn't know what Logic, Pro
Yeah.
X is. Um, and like that's okay, and but I I just thought that it was best to just kind of, those are still there. People downloaded them, so they're technically still,
They
floating
exist.
around.
Yeah.
Yeah. um, for better or for worse. But um, I just think for especially the new people that are discovering my music, because I still am a new artist. Um, I just think that I want to have my best foot forward, and I think the tracks that I have now have a great representation of that.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Um, so still kind of filling in the gaps between those early days and now, but I would say, with You're Fine, which is a song you put out at the end of the year of 2020 with the Hallelujah cover, I'd say, but the lead track on that is, I think, the first song that feels a little bit like it kind of indicates where you would end up on the next single and on the EP. Um, while you were writing and working on, especially these more recent songs that theoretically maybe could have even ended up on the EP, were you thinking about a larger release, whether it was like an album or an EP, or were you very content and deliberately only releasing singles or an A and B side and keeping the releases smaller?
yeah. I think I've always wanted to put out an EP, um, just like a cohesive project, like I said, because I think that just helps the listener, and it also helps yourself, in finding that sound. And like I said, I think that's really important for any artist. And so I think that was always the plan. And honestly, like I honestly wish it came, or well, I thought it would come a lot sooner than it did. Um, but honestly, like I'm very happy that it's happening exactly when it's happening. Um, just because, looking back at even those other releases, would I feel the same way about those other releases if I put it, that I feel about those releases if I put it out like, 6 months ago or something, maybe. But I know for a fact now, when it's releasing September 10th, that I feel 100% confident in this project. And that's a feeling that I haven't felt um, ever,
Yeah.
as like with a project, at least. I mean, with the singles that
Something
I've.
more than just a song with the 5 songs. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it's not even that. It's just like the whole shebang. Like I played that EP release show, and that was a fun thing. And then we did press release, one sheet, all this stuff that I had no idea was even like a thing. Um, and that's like all coming together, and it it feels good, you know. It feels good, and yeah, that's why I think people are really gonna enjoy it, because I just it feels good.
Feels good. Um, just given, I mean, even at only like a couple songs per year with those first couple years, it still seems like you're writing pretty consistently or working on new music pretty consistently, and especially going forward with the more recent songs in the EP. But do you write pretty like very even, or do you write in bursts where you get like a wave of creativity and you jot down like 2 or 3 song ideas maybe that get fleshed out, or maybe end in the recycling bin? But that's
Yeah,
so
no,
it
for
goes.
sure. I think if I have to put my mind to it.
Okay.
Sometimes it just comes, and that's so exciting. And sometimes I'm just able to, finish a song. Other times I just am sitting in an airplane, and then like a melody pops into my head, and I'm like, oh, this is great. And then I record it, with voice memos
Just
with my
on the
mask.
airplane. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, with my mask still on. and and other times it's just like I said, like it's just like I have to do this, or no, I want to write 5. Like for example, like I had I narrowed down to 5 tracks for the EP probably 2 weeks before we started recording. And I was like, okay, I feel pretty good about this. Um, and then I was like, I think I'm gonna write 5 more just to make sure that like I feel 100% about these, you know. And so in those 2 weeks, I wrote 5 songs, and um, 2 of those 5 songs actually ended up on the EP, which is super crazy because you know the one of the songs on the EP, "Let Me In," is like over 2 years old. And then yeah, so it was really cool to see that, and I mean honestly, like I wish that I'd be like that I'm able to write more, and like I think especially with like the release show and everything, that took a lot of time away from songwriting. But I think especially like with this EP coming out, um, I'm already like starting to write again, and I think I'm super happy about that. And also like my big plan this fall is, you know, I'm studying abroad in Vienna, and my plan is, you know, since I'm not able to play shows over here, um, is just to write the next project, and I already have, you know, some other things, little singles that are already kind of set, but um, the next project, and I'm really excited to finally do that and not worry about, you know, shows, press release,
Yeah.
you know, trying to, you know,
All the
get,
bells and whistles that kind of draw
yeah,
down the fun. Yeah.
yeah. And so I'm really excited about that.
Are
Yeah.
you going to be in Vienna when Valley comes out or after
I
that?
so it's actually so Valley comes out September 10th. I get on the airplane September 11th.
Okay.
So
Wow.
so it's
Perfect
pretty
timing.
close.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Um
and then I'll be there till January 29th. But
okay. Word.
yeah.
Um last question kind of leading up to the EP, because I know we've already kind of talked about that a good amount, but we'll
Yeah.
still get more into it. You released the song Why just before the EP, just a few months ago, and it seemed like a lead single. It was even kind of advertised as that, with like the music video and kind of like that extra push and like promotional push that we love in this day and age. But it didn't end up on the EP. Was it originally going to, and maybe was swapped out for one of those 2 newer songs, or what? And also,
Yeah.
what about that song felt like a lead singer, or felt like something you wanted to release, kind of, even if it wasn't on the EP, just to get some extra buzz and just really let people know that you're about to release more music?
Yeah, I so it was going to be on the EP. That was kind of the plan. And then I think as producing it, it just wasn't, I don't know, it just seemed like there was so much to unpack in the EP that it almost seemed to like distract from it. I don't know if that makes sense, but it wasn't, I don't know, like I feel, and like
Something about it felt
what
off almost in comparison to the
yeah,
rest of
and
the EP.
not in like a bad way, but it was
Okay.
just like there the other single had been out for, I mean, it came out May 4th. Why came out May 4th, and it's now September, and I think that's like 3 4 months. Um and I don't know, I think people had already, you know, experienced it, and I think they were waiting to experience something completely different.
Yeah.
Um and so that's why we kind of decided to let it be kind of more of a promotional thing, and more of
Hmm.
like a, oh, like, you know, because before then I hadn't put out a track since December.
Yeah.
Um another single that, you know, really had a big um push, just like, oh, this is what I'm doing, and this is, and you know, also the music video was a big visual, um that wasn't like anything else that I'd put in the, you know, put
Hmm.
before, and so it was a big push in the right direction, just with everything else, and um, definitely a good foundation for this release.
Yeah. And I almost kind of appreciate that you didn't do like the streaming thing that people do, where like they release like a single that gets really popular like a year and a half before their album comes out, and then they just tack it on as like a bonus track, just like
Yeah.
stream farm. You're like, oh, come on, man. So shout out for not doing that, I guess.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
um, so if I'm not mistaken, the EP Valley was originally going to come out in July, or at least earlier in the summer. Um, did Wise exclusion have anything to do with that, or is it still just kind of that disconnect you were mentioning before? And also, I guess, what led to the EP's just delay by a month and a half or 2 months or so?
Yeah, so the plan was the EP to come out for the EP release show. So July 29th, that was kind of the plan. Yeah. And it it so that night it did come out partially. So I kind of did, yeah, so I did like a local release kind of deal. Just because I don't know, I think I kind of wanted to reward the people that,
It came
that
out to
came
the
to the
show,
show,
yeah.
and just make it a really special, unique moment. So I made 50 CDs, and I had like digital download cards. So everyone that came to the show got a free digital download card, and then they could get a CD if they wanted to. And I kind of wanted to do that instead of just give it to everyone, just because there was the whole preparation side of things with promotion and stuff like that I wasn't really quite um, focused on, just because I was so focused on promoting the show. And I actually ended up connecting with a publicist, you know, during that time or whatever, leading up to the show, and she was actually the one that convinced me um, to push it back to September 10th. And she was like, oh, if you push it back here, this gives her more time. It gives me more time to just kind of make make the biggest splash, And I'm like, why not? I'm not going to be able to put out anything for a while. Yeah, we'll see. But yeah, so that was kind of the process and the thought behind that, and I feel like we made a really good decision for sure.
Yeah, so the EP, like you said, is going to be out September 10th. And as we've already mentioned several times, you think it was intended as a very cohesive work, is kind of a first release, even though you've been putting out singles for 2 years. And I am inclined to agree with that. It feels like a very deliberate collection of songs, even as it still goes in a bunch of different directions. And now that you've mentioned that some of the songs were written really recently, and then some, or at least one, was written years ago,
Yeah.
I'm curious how you pulled these songs from all these different kind of times in your life and times in your artistic growth, if you will, to put them all together and still have it feel cohesive, even just to you, given how the songs are all written in different times in your life in different circumstances.
Yeah, I think so. So yeah, Let Me In was kind of the first one, and that was written, uh, I think, almost 2 years ago. I don't quite remember, but yeah, and I guess so. Then Page and Page and Not Today were written. I think, okay, yeah, Not Today was written second. That was in, I think, January or February of 2020, and then Page was written late March of 2020, right when kind of COVID hit. And I remember that because I got a big like spurt of like writing, and that was one of the songs that I ended up keeping. And I think it was that, and then also just kind of during that time, obviously performing as much as I could, or as much as anyone could, I guess, with everything going on. There were certain songs that people gravitated towards more, and those three at least were ones that people really enjoyed kind of consistently, and they're like, when is this coming out, all this stuff. I heard that so many times for Let Me In especially. And it was not only that, but it was like I feel really good about these, and especially with Paige, I thought that was probably my best songwriting that I had done in that like time period. And so I think with that, that worked out. And then I guess, fast forwarding to, June, early June, late May, I decided to write, 5 songs or whatever, and I just come back from filming Y, the music video for Y, out in LA, and I visited my old home in Fresno. I'd seen all my friends and everything, and um, it was so weird, seeing them. It was like good, and it was also strange, just because a lot of things changed, but weirdly some things stayed the same. Um, and those things that stayed the same were just kind of uh, not not haunting. It wasn't. It was just like interesting. It was so interesting, and it wasn't like some weird, like, oh, I have history with this person. It was more just like in a general, like life kind of thing. Like, this is how life is here. And when you're younger, even 13, you don't recognize that. And it was super crazy because I haven't visited in like 5 years, and now I feel like I'm a little bit more aware. I just saw this, and I just thought it was really interesting, and so that's kind of what led to kind of the inspiration of those other 5 songs. Just a little bit about that, um, and then yeah, that's kind of what sparked the idea of the title of the EP, Valley, just because, I mean, that's like the San Joaquin Valley. That's where I lived, and then also, like, in Stillwater, it's like the St. Croix Valley or whatever. And so that was kind of my idea behind that. And then for the track In the Valley, that was kind of based on my experience with going back to Fresno, and just kind of having all this. And one of the lines that I say is, "It's been 5 years since I loved you." But I loved you. So, like, what happened here? And it just, I don't know. It just really stuck out to me. And then also, it just, even Paige, like, had some lines that were like, wow, like, I didn't realize that this was written about this. And it just ended up really connecting all of the songs together. Into, like I said, one cohesive element. But yeah, no, it ended up working really well with songwriting and the whole kind of vibe
Yeah.
of the EP.
This is a question more about when you were going into recording the songs and actually really finalizing them musically to a degree. But what were your inspirations there when you were trying to imagine the music surrounding these songs and the melodies and everything you'd already kind of come up with? And
Yeah.
also, what have been your inspirations for the writing of these songs? Kind of more generally, like, clearly the songs you just were talking about were about your experience in Fresno and about that, but more generally, where do your inspirations come from when you're writing a song? Is it just from life? Is it where is it coming from, I guess?
Yeah. So I think like production and arrangement wise, I had made like so many demos for each of these songs. Like, I think the most that I made for one song was like 9, and it was like, so I already kind of had a good idea of what I wanted. Um, and then so that's kind of what made producing and arranging and stuff with my co-producer a lot easier to do. And then I will say, for songwriting, um, I'll, what normally sticks out to me is just relationships. I don't know, like personal things, but I've written songs to like what I read in a magazine. Like, I think I was reading a like Nirvana Time magazine or something like that. It might have been Rolling Stone or something, and I read that like at a, where was I? I was I was like up on the North Shore or something like that. I don't know. It was really weird, but we were up there for like a week. Um, and so I was like, I'm going to read this, and so I did. And so it's like, it goes from there to, something that, even someone told me, I mean, The Cage is about something that someone told me, and it really kind of, stuck out to me. And I was like, man, I have to like talk about this, because it was just like it was so crazy, and it wasn't some crazy story. It was just like something that didn't go the way that it should have gone. And that's what was crazy about it. It wasn't like some heroic, hero's journey. It was just like, wow, like this actually happened to someone and they experienced this. Like that's crazy and it should be talked about.
As you were figuring out just kind of which musical direction each song would go in, because I think that a lot of songs do have their own distinct kind of palette, and despite like the through line for the EP, but as you were writing that and especially in the studio or wherever you were recording the final recordings, how did you determine that? Was it a little bit more deliberate, or were you just kind of naturally drawn in that direction for each of the songs?
Yeah, I think a lot of it was based off of my live performances of each of them. I will say though that In the Valley and In the Cage, the first time they were performed was July 29th.
Oh boy,
so EP release.
Yeah.
So that was obviously not based off of that. But I think with every single song that we started working on, it always began with an acoustic version. So it always began with just me singing and playing with an acoustic guitar through the whole track. And that's what we did for every one of the songs. And that really helped us kind of, shape the song around that. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of how it
always been determined by the live. Yeah, that actually kind of makes sense because the first and the last songs are the ones that kind of go in the more unexpected directions, just listening to them. And the other three, I can now see, like just imagining, I can see you performing those ones live a little more easily. And not meant that's a perfectly positive thing. It just, that makes a little bit more just like, oh yeah, I can see you doing this.
Yeah, for sure.
And so it'd be exciting to see the other two songs that are get a little bit more out there done live.
Yeah, no, it was exciting. It was crazy because I mean, all the people, and I mean, the majority of the people hadn't like consistently seen like all the shows that I was doing or whatever. But so obviously like the Cage and in the Valley were, the first time they saw that, and a lot of people really gravitated towards that because it was something new. And it was this, I think it just turned out really well.
Yeah. So with recording everything, it was you and another person as a co-producer. How did you get connected with that person? And were there any other collaborators or people that performed on the EP? And like, I know you've had like your backing band, were they involved? And how did you kind of just build this little universe of collaborators or people that have worked with you or worked on the EP maybe?
Yeah. So his name is Thomas Aban. He's the guy that produced the EP with me. And I met him through like a mutual friend. And we both are from Stillwater, Minnesota. And so we kind of just met just kind of around. And I'd always sent him stuff or whatever, and he'd always give me feedback or whatever. And I never really was like, oh, I want to work with you, just because that's not his main thing. That's actually not his thing at all. He's normally just like he does his own thing as his own artist. And then actually the first time when we decided to work together on Why, first of all, and then the EP, that was his first time ever doing anything with another artist. And so it ended up working really well with that. And then I guess performers, it was only, I did vocals, guitars, saxophone. There's a saxophone in there. And then he did synths and drums. And then those were the two performers.
Just you two? Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So those were the two deals. And I mean, that also just came with the amount of time that we had. And just like what was needed, it's not needed. It's not needed to have like a full mic'd drum kit for every song, and we also just didn't have the time or the budget to do that. But that's kind of how that went.
Wow. Yeah, that's very interesting. Those are my last questions about the EP itself. So I know we're speaking just a few weeks before it's even out. But with the release coming forward here and even going beyond, what do you have planned next? I mean, you've already kind of hinted that, I guess, with Vienna, but just kind of fill people in on what is going forward, what you got going forward.
Yeah. So I have a few projects that I actually started. Well, one was started in LA, and then another one just has been going on with this artist, and actually ended up kind of slowly finishing in LA, because the guy that I showed it to was just like, oh, I'd love to, work on this with you, and I was like, well, maybe. So I'm not too sure yet on those stuff, but there are a few things coming out, just kind of while I'm away. I don't know when, but definitely there's definitely things that are in the works that I'm really excited about.
Are any of these the songs that you wrote during that 2-week burst, or are they newer songs? If you even want to say.
No, they're new. They're not from that 2-week burst, and they're new. I think one started kind of a little bit ago, and then I kind of just opened it back up again.
Yeah.
But they're both very new.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. This will be kind of an interesting question. I always like to end the interviews by just asking people what are the local artists or bands that they've been enjoying recently, whether they've put out new music or not. And if you have any Stillwater musicians or bands that you can think of, I'm sure there are plenty of people that haven't heard a lot of these bands if people are listening in the Twin Cities. So if you need to pull out your Spotify or something.
No, you're good. I got them.
Oh, word. Nice.
I think a big one, not so much like influence, but just like they're great people and they make great music, are the Shackletons. They're from Stillwater, and the two people that opened for me at the entry July 29th, Gowns and Dury, both of those bands are killer, and they're so sweet too. They're such kind. Those ones. There's an artist called Brooke Elizabeth. She's really amazing. Yeah, those are the ones that are off the top of my head.
Yeah. So as we've said many, many times, the Valley EP will be out September 10th. You can find it on pretty much any streaming platform, I'm guessing. Is it available for purchase anywhere like Bandcamp or CDs left over?
Yeah, I mean, there's if you reach out to me over DM or something, I have a few CDs left. And yeah, it'll be on like iTunes and Bandcamp and all that fun stuff.
Very cool. And people can just find you on social media, just pretty much at Colin Bracewell, I think it is. Just on, or is it? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's it.
Thanks so much for chatting this morning, Colin. Good to finally catch up.
For sure. Thank you so much.
The Ear Coffee Podcast is a companion to the blog of the same name. If you like this episode, please leave us a rate and review so we can stand out among the other music podcasts. You can follow us at Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Ear Coffee. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.